Today, we're going to talk about the nice parts about getting older. But first, I want to thank the folks at Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island for sponsoring these programs. We have get-togethers several times a week, and they help make it possible. Fieldstone Communities has assisted in independent living and a vibrant memory care operation up on Rolling Bay. To find out more or schedule a tour or learn about day stay and respite programs, call 206-594-1010. Email Ashley C. at fieldstonecommunities.com. Check out the website at fieldstonecommunities.com, or they say just stop by for a tour. We also want to acknowledge and are happy to acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water. They have lived on the lands and plied these waters since time immemorial, and we honor them and are learning from their stewardship. Anne Lovejoy, my colleague, is here to to get us started on this conversation. I guess you read a book that got you, or at least an article that got you thinking along these lines. So
Actually, Reed, what it started with was I was browsing in the library at the senior center, and I always go in there and check out some puzzles and some books. And I saw this little book, which I posted in the chat if you're interested in it. But I thought, well, that's novel. I like being old, a guide to making the most of aging. And I started reading about it. And the woman who wrote it became a, a child development specialist in university settings rather late in life. And she was someone who didn't have a lot of early educational advantages, so she went and got them when she was ready. And I just loved this book because it's full of such interesting, intriguing ideas and ways of looking at things. And one of the pieces I thought I would start us off with is something she says really early on, which is, I really like myself for trying things I thought I couldn't do. I like the person I'm becoming as I age. Now, when I look in the mirror, even though I can't actually see myself, she got almost blind. I love being able to say, "You're okay, old girl," and I give myself a big smile. I love that. So, for anyone on the aging track from 40 to 104, I hope this book will inspire you to make choices about how you grow old and help you realize you don't have to leave such an important matter to chance. So, I loved several things about that, but especially like idea of liking who we become is really wonderful to me because it has that flavor of not just I have so many people moaning and groaning, and I've done it myself about, oh my God, now my knees are going, now my back. Here's this woman in her 90s who is pretty much legally blind, quite deaf, has some physical challenges and some disabilities, and she's happy as a clam. And one of the things she loves the most, this is this picture of her at her beach house, and she was from Seattle, so her beach house is out on by Hood Canal, right? And she would get friends to take her out there and put a chair in the water so she could sit there with her feet in the water and hear the splashes. And she said, I've loved the water all my life. I don't have to see it. I can hear it. I can smell it. And even though I can't, really hear as well, blah, blah, blah. But it was like using her active imagining to be in a place she loved the most. And I just thought, what a courageous, beautiful way to feel uh, about your whole life, even as we do look at, obviously, we're all kind of looking at things that are maybe not as easy to do as they used to be. But I wanted to hear from, and I put that in the chat if anyone's interested in looking it up. I'm trying to find a copy. I think it's an ebook now. It's published by iUniversity. But I just thought, this is the kind of book, if I had 10 copies, I'd be handing them to all of you. And Mike, I've heard you say things like you like who you're becoming, and you really like yourself right now. And actually, I think I heard you say you're falling in love with yourself as you become more awake to who you are in the world. And I just thought, what a great, amazing way to feel.
I'm getting over the infatuation and becoming fully in love. One of the things I like about myself is that I don't put up with things the way that I used to. I feel like I have the right to say no, and I have the right to object if things aren't comfortable for me. And I just feel like I look back on my life and I remember things that I put up with in the past. And I'm sort of like, I can't believe that I didn't object to that, or that I didn't file a lawsuit or something. I mean, I'm thinking of a specific example where I had to have surgery and I had had a really bad experience with a certain kind of anesthetic. And I went to great lengths, including meeting with the anesthesiologist well before the surgery, to explain that I did not want this same medication given to me because it made me sick as a dog. And they said everything would be fine. And then I was in the prep room getting ready, and I was all hooked up to the IV, and this nurse comes whisking in and she put stuff into the IV. And I say, what was that? And of course, it was the thing that makes me sick as a dog. And so I think that's the point at which I should have filed a lawsuit, because I had bent over backwards to avoid that. And then I ended up being very sick. And then they ended up giving me some anti-sickness medication that made me feel like I wanted to jump out of my skin. So that's the kind of thing I don't put up with anymore.
You know, I think when it's true that I was told at one point in my career, and this, believe me, many, many years ago, do you think you might be a little over civilized? Because growing up in New England has a very civilizing influence, and you don't say many things, and you certainly don't talk about anything even faintly unpleasant. Well, obviously, those of you who know me know that I've outgrown that stage. But I do feel like it's part of the freedom of, our elder years. Being an elder does come with some definite benefits, and one of them is certainly that, Mike, of like not putting up with things that are really not acceptable. I mean, for me, it was even hard to not finish reading a book. If I hated the book and I didn't like it, but if you start it, you have to finish it, right? Thinking,
Yeah.
actually, no, I don't. I can actually pick and choose a lot more about not just my books, but my friends, my experiences, the way that I'm, living out my life in the world. Lena, I wanted to ask you about this too, because I've heard you say some fun things about just being so eager to be a baby elder.
Yes, let me make sure my phone is. I am actually turning 59 tomorrow, tomorrow.
Ooh.
And so when I was 40, I remember telling my circle of friends and my cousins, all within the same age group, how excited I was that 50 was coming up around the corner. And they all thought I was crazy, literally crazy, because they're fighting it. They're like, no, 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 we don't claim our age. We don't say our age, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't wait. Over time, they were asking me why I was so excited. And there were a couple of reasons. Number one, it sounds cheesy, but I love the senior discounts wherever you go. Maybe it's Denny's, maybe it's a cup of coffee, maybe it's a 10% discount wherever. Love that. But the second part was in my family, in our culture, on the Filipino side and the native side, we hold our elders up with very high regard. We hold our elders up with very high respect, and they're knowledgeable. And so that in itself is a whole nother something to talk about series. That could be a whole thing in itself. But one part of that I always joke about with my cousins who are just a smidgen younger than me is that when we have family functions at the Philam Hall or even at someone's house, it's always customary that the elders can sit there while the younger ones get their plate. And sometimes at our functions, you could have 20, 30, 40, 50 people in line for the buffet to get their plates. But when you're an elder, you get to sit comfortably drinking your coffee while some of the younger ones get your plate for you and serve you. And I like that piece. So I used to tease my cousins and stuff who are a bit younger than me. I'm your elder now. You have to go get my plate for me and my or whatever. And they still roll their eyes at me to this day and shush me away. Lena, we can get our own, blah, blah. But yeah, that along with being excited about waving my AARP card around. I don't know why that brought me joy, but it totally brought me joy when that came around and I saw my name on it. It was like getting my license when I was 16. I don't know why it made me happy. It just did and still does. I still show it around. I actually use several programs within the AARP plan that give me discounts. I never would qualify for prior to becoming an elder. So I think there's all kinds of good benefits. But the one thing that I will walk away with, because I don't want to take too much time, is the one thing I've learned as I'm getting older is much kind of a mirroring Mike's comment about not only speaking up for yourself, take no ish, advocating for yourself, but one thing I walk away a lot with is appreciation, gratitude, and patience. Those are three things that I never crossed my mind 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Now it's all about it. And the people that I see on the screen and that I see at the senior center all the time remind me of that, and how this is where all the good stuff is, right here. If you just slow down, appreciate, and have some patience, because, life's still going to roll on, but we can always do it with a smile and be glad that we have each other. So becoming an elder just has so many layers that I can peel off for another hour and a half, but that was just kind of my little smidgen of a story with me turning older to become an elder. So there you go.
Thank you, Lena. Sheila, I see you nodding your head rather vigorously. You're muted, honey.
Muted. There I am. Not no more long, right? I'm shaking my head because whatever Lena just said is, like twice or 10 times the same for me. I mean, truly, there's only a couple things, and I've been older now for several years, many years, and in fact, I think I might be the oldest one here, which is sort of cool. I think that's really nice, as a matter of fact. But at the same time, I think that I can do more than I am able to do. And my dear daughter, who will be out of my will because of this, did this to me. She said, "Mom," and she pointed to my head, and she said, 20. And then my body, 86. And I said, "Just shut up and go away." I still am having a hard time allowing myself to be helped across the street or downstairs. And she does this for me. God love her. She really cares a lot. And after having fallen a couple of years ago, I can understand where she's coming from. And I really appreciate it so much. I appreciate the love and care that my kids are giving me. And that's lovely to be old enough to have that happen to me.
That's true. And I also have the other side of that, in a way that there's such an honor and privilege in taking care of even our elders, our parents, our partners, our friends. And we're all at the place where more and more people are kind of passing on. And being in that space now, I feel like I bring so much more compassion, patience, and wisdom to it than I did when I was younger. When I was, let's be clear, I was very dutiful and I was as kind as I could be, but I don't feel like I had the patience. And maybe just because it's a whole lot easier to sit around now than it used to be. But I feel like I'm a better caregiver than I was, though I've been doing it most of my life, one way or another. I don't know. Dick, would you have anything to say about that? Or
Well, I'll pick up on what Mike was saying about freedom. From my experience. The experiencing of the freedom led to a much deeper understanding of the meaning of life. For some years, I was part of the University of North Carolina at Asheville, and we had a program called the Center for Creative Retirement. And it was designed to help the so-called silent generation deal with transitioning to retirement, because we were the first generation that could look forward to 20 or 30 years of retirement living, as opposed to just a couple of years and dying off. And the question was, you have all this freedom, what are you going to do with it? So we developed programs, and one was called How to Make the Most of Your Golden Years. And it was all about looking at your skills and abilities and interests, what you always wanted to do but never could do, and all that kind of stuff, and helping to develop a creative, meaningful form of retirement living. And that was really fine for a few years. But then as our members began to get older and experience physical problems and some even dying, people sort of turned and said, well, now wait a minute, it's great to learn to explore the possibilities of a creative and fun retirement. But hey, I need to be able to adjust to this aging and dying bit. This is a different ballgame. And so we developed some more programs. One I called What Mortality Teaches Us About Life. Again, it was looking at the depths of life and recognizing there are parts of us that never grow old and how we can utilize and develop those and to sort of compensate for the fact that some parts of ourselves inevitably do age. And then people began to ask questions about their religion and spirituality because they were saying, well, you know, many of the things we sort of learned from a religious perspective, as I look at them now as a senior citizen, they seem designed to sort of control my behavior as a child, and I'm having trouble making a lot of sense out of some of these things now. But I know it's valuable, so what am I going to do with this? And just about that same time, 9/11 hit.
Mm.
And so the religious question became even more important because people were saying, hey, how is it possible for people to have such diverse religious beliefs as part of the same country? You know, how is it that we as Americans can have freedom of religion and all this and then have all the problems like 9/11? So we were struggling with that because as a public institution to look into religion wasn't a great idea, but I developed one called One Country, Many Religions to look at that various issue, not the particulars of religion, but why we have them and what spirituality in general is all about and what it means to be a country that has a diversity within it like that. And all of this was sort of like forcing people to peel back onions or layers to get at the very depth of what's important in their life, what's meaningful, what's purposeful, and to help them maximize that in a way that was suitable for them so that aging became a positive experience because of the depth that they were able to explore that during their striving and driving years simply was not possible. So I learned a lot those years.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to tap into some of those skills because they sound like great programs for today. I mean, all of them. Talk about relevant, right?
Yeah.
I
Boy.
like Dick, I like the striving and driving.
Mhm.
That's a great statement.
Especially for those of us who aren't doing so much driving.
Yeah.
One of the
Indeed.
things that recently happened for me was I've had some eye surgery, and the second one didn't actually go so well. And it was really, truthfully, it was terrifying to start thinking about, you know, I mean, we're all aware the parts are wearing out, right? Some of the O-rings aren't what they used to be, right? And there's bits and pieces of joints that aren't behaving the way they should. But the idea of losing vision was absolutely terrifying to me. And one of the things I found comforting in this book is that she took it in stride and talks a lot about how she dealt with that and the things that she found, ways that she found to cope and stuff. But I think that piece about, you know, looking at your spiritual understandings with mature eyes, mature heart, mature mind, it's quite different, isn't it? To
Yes.
and you know, it can be a very different influence than it was as a younger family. Rita, did you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say I have this little, I have my word book here that I write stuff down so I can share. And I have this one, and I think it kind of goes with what we're talking about. It's called Grief and Gratitude. It's just short. I was going to read it. It said, the work of the mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. If I carry only grief, I'll bend toward cynicism and despair. If I have only gratitude, I'll become saccharine and won't develop much compassion for other people's suffering. Grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible. Which I think that because we all carry grief with us. You know, I think it's one of those things, and so that's a whole thing that I try to read once a week, maybe.
No kidding, Rita, that is beautiful. Mike?
Echoing Rita, I heard an even shorter quote, which is grief is the price we pay for love.
For love. Yes, I have that written down too.
Mhm.
That was Queen Elizabeth said that.
Really?
Yes,
Which one?
the second.
Ah, okay. So Linda Holt, what are you thinking about?
Well, you know what? This morning I was taking a look at some quotes on aging, and I came across one I hadn't seen before that I really liked that said, as soon as you feel too old to do a thing, do it.
Yeah.
We put so many limitations on ourselves thinking that we're too old to do that. I'm too old to wear that. I'm too old to go there. I'm too old to dress like that. I'm too old. But we're not. When we talk about freedom, this is our time of freedom to do whatever the heck we want to do. We've got a good excuse. I'm old. Excuse me, I'm old. You know. So, and really, I sort of tried to live my life that way. I do whatever the heck I want. A group of us elders are going to Bruno Mars cover show next month. Guaranteed we will be the oldest ones there. And at some point in my life that might have bothered me, but not anymore. Not anymore.
What kind of shows, Linda?
It's a Bruno Mars cover show.
Nice.
I can't afford to see Bruno, so I'll have to see his impersonator.
Right. Barbara, how about you?
Well, a couple things. Dick said something about peeling back the layers of an onion. And I certainly have experienced that since I retired and have the luxury of time to think slower and longer and more complex thoughts, maybe not all in one sitting, but, you know, to just keep revisiting and reworking things is a great gift. The other thing I'm aware of feeling is just so much gratitude, just every day. And I stop and pause and kind of soak things in. And I'm so happy that that's a habit of mine that seems to be getting a little stronger. And I'm still working on patience. I have a long way to go on that road, but I have made some progress.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, and part of the joy of that deeper awareness and peeling of the onion is being able to share that with your grandkids and others that ask you for some sort of advice in one way or another, but to help them realize that you don't have to wait until you're 60 or so to discover the depth and the meaning of life. You can begin to explore that now if you're aware of the importance of that. And speaking for myself, as I was growing up, I was never aware of the importance of that. I just didn't have time or energy for it. And being able to allow them what I almost think of as the luxury of really looking at that at an early age and shaping their life with that in mind. Wow, I wish I'd had that. But it's great to be able to help others do it.
Yep.
Any stage, right?
Yeah.
I know.
So,
Legacy.
Jane, I wondered, I saw you nodding there. Did you have something you
Oh,
wanted?
just everything just resonates. But as I was thinking about this, what kept coming up for me was an early recognition of this kind of community of seniors as I got probably in my late 50s to 60s. I don't know if men have this experience, but I've talked to women friends. What I started noticing is like a person-to-person acknowledgement from other older women. Just passing on the street, just this very subtle eye-to-eye contact or a nod of the head. It's just like, I see you. We know stuff the others don't. But there was just this sense of connection, and it eliminated a lot of that sort of cultural thing that says for women, you become invisible as you get older. I didn't feel invisible. I thought, oh, there's a whole lot of us out there and we see stuff. Men see that. Does that happen between men?
Not so much. I'm just celebrating that a woman can not feel invisible.
Yeah, it was remarkable, and I still feel it. And I love acknowledging that I'm part of a whole big community of seniors and all the gifts and the knowledge that comes with that.
Definitely. Barbara, I've heard you talk about that too.
Right. You and I were talking about that recently. And I was also, because I had noticed it and Anne had noticed it too. So it is a wonderful thing. But to me, it also brings to mind when I see people of color in a predominantly white environment and they notice each other, and there's also that just that silent, hey, I see you. And so I could appreciate that kind of silent support and recognition.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful.
I think
Where's
that I was just going to say that one of the experiences I've had being involved with the senior community center is that you know, connect people outside of that, that you see people around town, and so you have a community connection, which is, uh, uh, I think, really important as part of enjoying growing old, is to make the effort to try to get involved in a few communities, just so that you have other connections and people that you might run into, um, and people who might invite you to go to the Bruno Mars cover show.
And you know, one of the things I love about the knitting group that, you know, has up to 25 people sometimes, is it's this great group of people who I might never know. I might not have ever met otherwise. But that as we sit together and work together, and sometimes we have projects, we're maybe needing a baby blanket for somebody who's, you know, whatever. There develops this intimacy that's quite beautiful. And I just cherish that it's people whose lives I might never have crossed that I get to meet, because the senior center has such a diverse group of people in it. And that, you know, we find our commonalities in different kinds of places. Maybe it's playing pinochle, or, you know, maybe it's the knitting, or maybe it's speaking German or whatever. But I just love that our interest groups introduce ourselves to each other in different ways, right? And one of the things that the book lady said was she cherished the luxury of failure, that as she got older, it was easier and easier to be not good at something and to do it anyway. And I loved that. Mike, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a plug for Liberation Laughter. As a group of older people. I've only been to 3 of their sessions so far, but they're just a wonderful, lively, cantankerous, in the sweetest way, group of people. They're just delightful to be with. And we had our annual potluck luncheon the other day, and it gave me more time to sort of sit and talk with people quietly rather than doing these improv exercises that we usually do. And I had some very nice conversations with Judy Nakata and Bob Kennicott. And Bob was telling me about, he said something which I just feel like I want to put it on a sampler for him, which is that he's had various physical challenges and injuries in his life. And so he's dealing with a lot of aches and pains, but he says, I never feel the pain when I'm laughing.
Oh, nice.
It was a nice thing to say.
Yeah.
And I do agree that every person I've had a chance to sit down with and just talk with, like in the fireside room and stuff, you start to, like Dick said, you peel back the onion of their lives as they begin to reveal who they are, what they've done, all kinds of fascinating things. It's marvelous. I love it.
And we couldn't have had Liberation Laughter if we were younger. You have to get to that point where, like you say, you have the freedom to just be yourself and not really care what other people think, and just enjoy life.
Exactly.
They're a very goofy group of people that I find delightful. So, yeah.
Reed, did you have something?
I was just going to say that when we're younger, we often find ourselves in those communities by dint of, you know, being in a PTA, or you're helping with your kids, or you're involved in work. You know, you have work activities, so you find yourself having to deal with people you wouldn't deal with otherwise. And so it kind of is incumbent on us, if we're going to have meaningful uh, years after we're working for pay, to kind of force ourselves to get out and do something to make those community connections, for them to pay back dividends to us.
one part, the author of the book I'm enjoying so much says that she was told quite firmly by several of her friends that she needed to work at that a little bit better. That instead of just going to the places she knew and with the people she knew, she had to work at walking up to someone at a senior center, which she joined, and saying, "Oh, hi, I'm so and so. How about you? What are you interested in?" And she said it was extremely difficult at first, but it got to be so much more fun because each time she met somebody wonderful. And I thought that was, the freedom of old age to be able to have the time to do that, and again, not worry about if somebody rebuffs you or whatever. They probably won't, though. And just feeling like being willing to be vulnerable in that way.
And it's nice to be involved in something that has an activity. One of the challenges is small talk. I mean, I never much liked it, but just the kind of some people thrive on it, but the advantage of being involved in a church or synagogue or a book group or a language discussion group is that you're there for some ostensible reason. You don't have to, or the liberation laughter. It's like we're going to play these games, and so that's the reason you're there, and that can tide you over those sort of difficult spots when you're getting to know somebody and you kind of run out of questions.
Barbara, and then Mike.
I have a poem by Alice Walker I'd like to read because it's just lovely. And I'll skip parts of it because it's a bit long, but the title is "What Do I Get for Getting Old?" A picture story for the curious. You supply the pictures. I get to meditate in a chair or against the wall with my legs stretched out or even in bed. I get to see maybe half of what I'm looking at. This changes everything. I get to dance like the tipsy old men I adored when I was an infant. They never dropped me. I get to spend time with myself whenever I want. I get to give up learning to sail. I get to know I will never speak German. I get to eat chocolate with my salad or even as a first course. I get to forget. I get to laugh at all the things I don't know and cannot find. I get to greet people as if I know them very well. After all, how different can they be? I get to grow my entire garden in a few pots. I get to spend time with myself whenever I want. I get to see and feel the suffering of the whole world and to take a nap when I feel like it anyway. I get to spend time with myself whenever I want. I get to feel more love than I ever thought existed. Everything appears to be made of the stuff. I feel this especially for you, though I may not remember exactly which you are. How cool is this? Still, I get to spend time with myself whenever I want. And this is just a taste, as the old people used to say down in Georgia when I was a child, of what you get for getting old, reminding us as they witnessed our curiosity about them, that no matter the losses, there's something fabulous going on at every stage of life, something to let go of maybe, but for darn sure, something to get.
Wow.
Amen.
I love that.
That is fabulous. Alice Walker. Wow. Definitely. Okay, Mike, top that.
I feel like I'm getting braver as I get older, and my courage takes many forms. It takes courage to walk up to somebody and say, "I'm sorry, I know we've met before and I've completely forgotten your name." And I find that it eases so many things in social situations if you give yourself the permission to do that. And I can remember being in social situations in my 20s and 30s and being very intimidated if it was with a group of people that I didn't know. And now I know that it's actually much more terrifying to hang back and worry about what would I say to that person I don't even know. And it's like wonderfully freeing to just walk up to somebody and say, "I like your hairstyle," or who do you know here? Just, it's like Reed says, small talk is a skill that it's just useful to be able to plunge into things like that and not hang back, because it really is much less scary when you're plunging in. That's what I found.
There's a, my older daughter writes every year for New Year, she writes 10 intentions for the next year. I won't read them all, but here's one that I just love. Everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
Ooh,
Every,
wow.
and as you know, as we get older, I mean, there's just, we know a lot more. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't have to fear when we were 20 or whatever. But it's amazing how much energy we spend not trying not to figure out the problem rather than just facing it. It takes so much less energy to do that. But you know, that's a skill we kind of learn and hone and go from there. So I thought that was kind of interesting too.
It is. Lena, you got your hand up.
Yeah, yes, I do. Just to kind of mirror again, Mike, one thing, the fear thing is, Rita, that's it. You just nailed it. That's 100% it for a lot of situations that even I feel socially awkward. I get social awkwardness. But one of the things I've been working on all year, and Reed can attest to this, is my, people are so shocked when they hear this, but I'm really shy when it comes to public speaking. You know, I can sit with you guys in a conference or, you know, in the dining room and talk to you all day and not blink an eye. But if I moved you in Huney Hall and I stood at the podium, forget about it. I'd be sweating bullets and probably crying, you know, just because of that Reed dynamic, the setting was different. And so with that being said, though, kind of again to mimic Mike, was really is keeping it real. Remember, we're all people. And one thing that I was overcoming throughout the years since I took this role is when we had guest speakers come in for anything. AMP is my big thing right now, but when we have guest speakers coming in, I just assumed that they were comfortable going to that podium and talking to our participants sitting in Huney Hall. I just assumed it. But I found out over time and talking with them before the event started, they were just as nervous as I was. And I let them know right out the gate, just like Mike, you know, just being honest with the people I really didn't know and going, look, I'm really nervous. If you hear me stuttering, I just want to let you guys know right out the gate, I'm really nervous. I'm not a pro at this. So once you do that, and again, that fear thing, then it doesn't seem as scary anymore. Fast forward a few months into this role, and it's not nearly as scary as it was when Reed first handed me the mic kind of thing and said, sink or swim, girl, sink or swim. But yeah, so there's a little bit of what Rita said and a little bit of what Mike said that I just had to tag on to you guys. You guys are nailed it absolutely right, and still a work in progress.
I think Dick and then Sheila.
Yeah, I was just gonna cap onto that. Again, the work we did at the University of North Carolina was based primarily on just what you said, Lena, is that we never had the faculty person stand up in front of the room. We always sat in a circle and talked as a family, because what we found was no matter who the person was that was, quote, the presenter, that the collective wisdom in the room far exceeded that the individual person had. And very often the role that I found myself in was basically just trying to draw out from other people the wisdom that they had that there was no way I could have any experience of. And the most profound thing that happened to me one time was when I did make a little bit of a presentation, and one lady said, well, now what you've said is really, really interesting, but you don't understand me. She said, I've lost my husband. And at that time, I absolutely did not understand her. And so I simply turned to the other ladies in the group and I said, have any of the rest of you women here lost your husband? And about 8 or 10 of them raised their hand. And I said, go for it. And they helped her to understand how they had wrestled with that issue and made sense out of it in their lives at that time in history. Something I could not have done. Now I could.
That's
Lee,
great.
did you have something?
I did. Yes,
Come in,
Yes.
Sheila.
thank you. I can remember in my early speaking years that I was giving information to people, and I was so wise and so brilliant and so erudite, etc. I want to throw up right now. But I was, it was terrifying for me. Just terrifying to be up in front of people. I hated it. I just couldn't stand it. But I was expected to do it in the position that I was in, so I needed to do it. Come to find out, a couple of things that I learned, some elders shared with me. First of all, why don't you talk about you? Why don't you share about you and what's going on with you and what you believe? And then somebody said to me, who can tell the story better?
Mm.
And I thought, ever since then, I've never had a bit of problems getting up in front of people talking at all, because I'm just sharing of me. That's what you hear is what you hear from me. And I don't have to tell you how brilliant I am on the subject of astrophysics, for example. And it's so much easier to be me and just to talk about me or my experiences.
Mike, did you have something?
No.
Okay.
Very good.
Marga.
The use of the phrase collective wisdom, I just did a little bit of math. So assuming we have 2,000 members and our average age is 75 years, that's 150,000 years of collective wisdom at the senior center.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's something.
Uh-huh.
It's like a geological age.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking with the collective wisdom thing too, the fact that most of us, probably with the exception of Lena, are baby boomers. And what an enormous group of us there still are, and the amount of collective wisdom in that group of baby boomers. The diversity, the experiences, the lifestyle, just the number of years that we've lived is amazing.
Right. And the thing that's kind of, well, I guess kind of scary if you look back, there are so many, with so many young people, which is fine, but it doesn't seem like the wisdom or the history is being taught to the younger people, and it's being lost. I mean, there is just stuff that I think young people don't have any idea that happened in the world or in our own country, that really don't believe it happened. And it's kind of scary to me it is. And I'm just going, that's why, like, a lot of times,
Can't tell if Rita froze or she's just thinking.
like on PBS, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Rita
you.
fine.
Oh, sorry.
I think Anne's the one who's freezing, but
Okay. Like on PBS and stuff, when they've got the history stuff, there are so many things that growing up during the 60s that I didn't really know about because it didn't touch my life directly,
Yeah.
So then you look at that and you go, holy cow, now you can have a better understanding of why people might feel the way they do about certain things. So I'm just hoping that this kind of history thing, that we don't lose that for ourselves, for our families, and for our country. Really.
I do think that there's in my experience with younger generations, I do feel like the divide is less than it was with me and my parents and my grandparents. I feel like there's a greater honesty. Maybe there's always the risk of information or wisdom being lost, for sure. But But I am grateful that it seems as though all the crappy stuff that's going on in the world right now, I do think that in some ways, at least inside close relationships, people are more honest or more willing to just
Okay.
say it. Just say it.
Good. Well, good. That makes me feel better now.
Well, I don't know if anybody else has that. I saw a couple heads nodding.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really
Yeah,
struck.
I do.
I spend a lot of time with kids, people of lots of different ages, and I'm really struck by the wisdom and maturity of actually my own grandkids and the high school kids and the middle schoolers. They've come through a lot of things too in their short lives.
Right.
The world has been very complicated for them. And, you know, the other day I was walking around and I heard a couple gals saying, "Oh, do you remember when we used to hide under our desks because they told us the bombs were going to go off and we were going to be safe at school if we hid under our desk?" And one of
Yeah.
them said, "Yeah, I feel like we're there again, you know, right?" And then she said, "Oh no, I think it'll be tsunami time first, right?" And they sort of laughed. But I thought, you know, we all had a lot of traumatic things going on in the background of our lives, but so has every generation since. And these kids have been brought up to be, for the most part, I think, more honest, more open, more. They may not necessarily be super strong in history, but they sure know how to be a person in a way that I was clueless. Like Dick, when you were saying you wish you'd known some of that wisdom early on in your life, and you could have shaped your life a little differently. I feel like a lot of young people are very, very aware that they are shaping their lives deliberately in ways that I didn't even get to till I was like 40.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Indeed. Indeed.
Nina?
Yeah, my son is 20, some of you might not know, and we have a really close relationship because much like Reed said, described, him and I talk openly about virtually everything. You know, I'm pretty honest and he's very honest. But at the same time, what Miss Rita said, there is something to be said for some generational stuff is getting pulled away and lost. Right. When we're in certain conversations in our Philam community, we're finding a lot of the younger generation is not really stepping in to be participant and active in the Philam community stuff. And we're trying to figure out why, what happened, where's the disconnect. A lot of our elders have passed away. And so the ability to be able to pick their brains and talk to them, talk story with them and you know, get educated from their experiences. They're not here anymore. And so some of the younger ones are looking around. When we just had a Philam function and we looked around the hall and saw how many empty chairs there were. And we started reminiscing about who's not here anymore. And so we had some of the younger ones jump in with the older ones who we're still blessed with. And I don't know what the right answer is, but it is a little bit about what Rita described and a little bit about what Reed described. Both of those scenarios are true at the same time. So I don't have an answer. One thing that came up a lot in our discussions about the empty chairs was technology and how the younger generation has that piece that my generation didn't have, my mom's generation, you know, didn't have. And so like the internet kind of did change everything. So just had to throw that little bit of tidbit out there.
You know, that's true, Lena. I mean, I grew up in New England, and at that time, there was a ton of like regional accents, for instance. And there were regional cultures. If we went to Vermont or Maine, there would be a really different life, a different lifestyle than we would have in Concord, Massachusetts, where I grew up, right? And then when I came out west, I was really struck by there was more of a homogeneity. Like people had been traveling all their lives to get there, I guess. You know, there was more movement. The country has, in my lifetime, has become much more mobile. And there, you know, people didn't seem to have a home place anymore. And there weren't the big family reunions that I remembered as a kid. And it has seemed like the part of that is because there's a universality that there wasn't. And I think when the kids get online, I know, for instance, working with a lot of the trans children, they feel like they have a huge community, a worldwide community that wouldn't have been even vaguely possible when I was young. And that, you know, I think to some extent, their communities online have not felt real to some of us. Like they need to get out and meet real people. And then I'm being told very firmly by people of a lot of ages and other generations, those are real relationships too, but they're not quite imaginable for me. So I'm thinking, we definitely have a lot to share, but we also have a lot to learn. And I think that, listening part is as important as ever, or maybe more important than ever, if we want to stay relevant to our kids, to our families, right?
Right. And I think that part of that is, as I was saying, is just realizing, like you said, that is a real community, because we're kind of going, and just kind of sitting in that, and we kind of have the leisure to be able to do that, and the privilege to be able just to kind of sit there and think about that. And we don't have to be running 80,000 miles. Some of us don't have to be running 80,000 miles and doing 45,000 things. So we can kind of, think about that a little bit. And that is really, I think that's one of the things is getting older and getting retired, is that I do have that time to do that. And that's what it takes. It takes understanding. It's education. It's, and we're just, I think it's really important, because there are some aspects of the internet and how people communicate and all that it's hard. It's hard sometimes for me to get my head wrapped around. I never talked to my kids on the phone. I had to learn how to text 15 years ago, or I would have never talked to them. And my two daughters and their family, we all lived in this big house, and we had, we had 3 different living spaces. We had, a big yard and stuff. So we'd be texting each other when you're in the house. The people downstairs are texting upstairs to know if we have some extra milk or eggs. I mean, I had to laugh at that when it first happened. And I looked at it and I go, this is just like crazy shit. But I've learned how to do that. And I think a lot of us have learned how to do that. Did the world end? No. Did I learn how to do it? Yeah. Do I always like it? No. But do I want to talk to them? Communicate with them? Yes, I do. So there I am.
That's one of the things about aging. We learn to adapt.
Yes.
There's a part to that, though, that is really exciting, to learn something new. And I am so grateful that I have my grandkids who can come over to my place and I'll say to them, this isn't working. And they sit down and they make it work just like that. No problem at all. And I'm just sit there with my mouth open in awe, and absolute awe and gratitude, for them to do that. It's just, but it's so amazing what they have an opportunity to do that I didn't. And I'm so that I am doing it now. And it's such fun. It's amazing to me.
I love that about Silver Tech. My phone was doing something bizarre and I brought it in, and this lovely girl, Georgia, took it and she sort of said, do you want to know what happened, or do you just want me to fix it? In a really nice way. And obvious, I was like, why don't you fix it? And she said, well, why don't I tell you what happened so you know you won't freak out again if you do it again, because this is what you pushed by accident and this is what happened, but it's really okay and everything's fine. But it took her like 30 seconds and she was so gentle and generous. And I thought, wow, that is, and she wasn't patronizing. And I think about how I felt like older people were often patronizing when I was younger, but they also didn't look to me for, what do you know that I don't, right? There wasn't a whole lot of the idea that the kids had much to say that was worth listening to in my experience growing up. And I just kind of love the mutual respect that goes on in those situations where we acknowledge that they have definite skills that we did not, and that they also acknowledge that we have plenty to offer too. And I think that's great. I've had kids say things like, how did you get through this, that, or the other? I want to know how you did that. Like acknowledging that life has been challenging in some places, and truly interested in getting some skill sets in their toolkit, right? And I love that mutual respect. I think that's such a gift for everybody, really.
Wow.
Make
tagging off the idea of technology, as many of you know, I just came out as a gay man about 3 years ago. And I can't tell you how many coming out videos I watched on YouTube that gave me the courage and the models to do that myself, even though I didn't know hardly any gay people who could guide me through that process, but it's all out there on YouTube. Young people, old people, Black people, Asian people, everybody out there. And it was really nice to have those models to go from in my process. And that gave me more courage to be out. And I have felt so supported, especially in the Queer Elder Family Group, and the rest of the Senior Center has been wonderful for just sort of affirming me in that process that I've been going through.
Well, and you're not alone. I mean, the Queer Elder Family Group here at the Senior Center has over 80 members, right? Which I think is really poignant. We started it when it was pointed out there wasn't really a safe, comfortable place to be if you were gay or queer and single and you didn't know people and you didn't want to go drink or, meet at a bar or something. And so it's been so rich and lovely to find communities popping up all over the place of interest, all kinds of interests, and also observing people taking care of each other who had come alone and felt really alone and then found in this family group some real family. I think that's a beautiful part of aging too, that we've learned to be family for each other in ways that maybe we weren't quite so clear about as younger people, or we didn't get that family's a much bigger, stretchier definition than the nuclear family of the 50s, right?
The whole concept of a chosen family, you find people that you have things in common with that you're not necessarily biologically related to. It's a wonderful thing.
It is a wonderful thing. Dick, did you have any thoughts about that? Or I could...
No, not specifically. I just think I would reinforce what several have said about the importance of communities, however you define that. And that really the bottom line, I think, is that life is all about relationships together and making those meaningful. Part of the joy of getting older, I think, is that a lot of the social so-called norms or patterns that we had to live under before are no longer as relevant. So we're free to just be ourselves and to give and receive love and positive relationships and kindness and without too much worry about what other people might think. And to me, that gets, again, at the heart of what it really means to be human. So.
Boy, I would agree with that. It seems like when you get down to those places where you're sitting with someone who's dying or you're looking at a great deal of loss and some really hard things, it seems like kindness keeps coming up as the most important thing. And I've thought that so many times, and especially, as I mature, that it is just like a core human quality, but it's kind of amazing. They even see it in animals, right? It's like it's just beings. It's part of being a person, whether that's a human or not. But I think, that kindness and compassion and connected community, those things mean more to me now than they ever have.
And the trees do it too.
That's right. That's right. And don't forget those mushrooms and me and my slime molds.
There you go.
Right?
Yes.
It's a big, big world and we're all connected in it. I kept wanting, Marcy, I wanted to know if you had anything you wanted to add. I don't know if you're listening in right now, but.
Sorry, I'm definitely listening. I'm very fascinated. I have nothing to add at all, but I'm enjoying the conversation. And thank you very much for Anne for bringing the book and talking about it. You've got a lot of interesting people who have chipped in.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a rich topic, and it's the kind of thing like Barbara and I've talked about it, Rita and I've talked about it, but and I think Lena and I've probably talked about it, and Linda and I've talked, right? I talk about it a lot, but I think it's like that's another thing. Like it's we're able to talk about stuff that we weren't able to talk freely about before. Barbara?
And just a quick observation is, who knew? I certainly didn't know that I would like being old this much, that I would be this happy at my time of life. It's like, that's never in the society at large, that is never contemplated. And
Right.
so what a great secret to uncover.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
Yes.
Well, we're kind of running out of time here. Has anybody got one more thing they want to throw out? Jane?
I think it'd be really worthwhile to repeat this conversation in a few months.
Sure.
It's just a lead-in question that I find interesting. I'm a senior peer counselor where I live, and in working with a client recently who's just trying to figure out some things, one of the questions we pondered was, who am I in the world? Kind of how do I see myself in the world, or who am I in my family, just as a way of solidifying your identity as you're aging or going through some transitional phase in your life.
Oh,
This
that's
is
a great
Also
question.
was one of the important things that came through in the work that I was doing, the sense of identity, because so many people had identified with their profession.
Yeah.
When they retired, they had no sense of who they were, and
Right.
helping them again find a deeper understanding of what it means to be me. Yeah, that's really critical.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. This
Well,
has
it
been
sounds like we better have another conversation. Yeah.
I'll put it on my tickler list here, and
There you
in
go.
March I'll say to you, Anne, hey, we should do that again.
Right? I love these conversations because they're always so rich and so
Yeah.
many unexpected, wonderful pieces. So thank you, everybody, so much.